I hope you're very well. First item on the agenda is to receive apologies. I've had apologies already from Louise Williams and Denise Ahmeti. Any other apologies, please?
Ian Ford.
Okay, Councillor Ian Ford. Any other apologies? Okay. Item 2 on the agenda, minutes of the previous meeting. We've all received those. Any comments? No.
I don't know what's the appropriate time to do this, Steve, but it is to do with the minutes from last time. I'd like to thank you very much for what you've done as being chairman in the
Thank you.
last. So, both of us have agreed that we do it at this point. So, thank you for what you've done, and be pleased. Sorry to see you leaving, and I mightn't be back either. So,
None of us maybe from Wiltshire anyway. Thank you very much. It's actually been a pleasure. I'll say some words at the end.
Can I? You've been really good. I've enjoyed your chairmanship.
Thank you.
As much as I enjoyed
I've been doing it wrong then.
just for balance,
Yeah.
Yes, I see you go.
Thank you. Thank you for those kind words. We'll say something about all that at the end of the meeting as well. Okay. Any other apologies? No. Minutes of previous meeting. We're on to that. Propose then. Can someone propose? Thank you. And seconder. Thank you. All those in favour? Any against? Carried unanimously. Item 3 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Does any of the members of the panel have any items they want to declare an interest on? And I will remind you that if at any point during the meeting you do feel as though there's an interest that you'd forgotten about or you just realised, just put your hand up and let me know. Item 4 on the agenda, chairman's announcements. No specific announcements. I will talk about the sort of next meeting at the end of this one. Public participation. Kieran, I can't see anybody in the room. Have we had any notification of public participation at all?
No, there was an anonymous question submitted a number of weeks ago, but it was actually a police matter, so I believe it was forwarded on.
Okay, thank you. I've had a request that agenda item 8 is brought forward ahead of agenda item 6 because we have Doug Downing on the line to present. Is that acceptable to the panel members?
Yeah.
Okay, on that basis then, let's go straight to agenda item 8, neighbourhood harm reduction.
Chair, good afternoon, good morning even. Can you hear me?
I can. Good morning to you.
So, a very warm good morning to you all. My name is Doug Downing. I'm the current superintendent or chief superintendent for local policing, responsible for the delivery of local policing, which includes neighbourhood harm reduction, headquarters operations, the control room, and local policing, which includes neighbourhoods. Jen Holton, who is our lead for the neighbourhood harm reduction, sends her apologies. She can't be with us today. So I've just been asked to present to you some of the work that we're undertaking within neighbourhood harm reduction, specifically around our volunteers and around some of the activity that we're taking in terms of preventative work and increasing our visibility within the communities. Chair, perhaps you just confirm for me when you can see the presentation on the screen.
Yep, we can see that. Yep.
Wonderful. I've been given about 10 minutes to go through this, so please, if there are questions, Chair, then please stop me as I work through. But there are 4 pillars of neighbourhood harm reduction. It's a specific team within Wiltshire Police. I think it's fair to say that Wiltshire Police has been on a journey, and you'll all recognise that. But there's a much greater focus on preventative measures and really pushing our visibility and recognising that actually prevention is far better than the cure. But under the neighbourhood harm reduction, there are 4 pillars: community road safety, community action initiatives, volunteers, and then children and young people. And I propose just to talk to you about those first 3 today. So the first one is the community road safety team. Now, many of you will recognise community road safety is a perennial issue, and we are very much focused on reducing road deaths and making our roads very much safer. And that's predominantly around partnership working, looking at our road networks and working with partners, including yourselves, to think about how the road network could be safer. In addition to that, intervention and working with drivers and schools and really pushing out education at the forefront of our messaging. And then finally, enforcement. Whilst we push out those messages and push out our visibility, of course, there is always an area that requires enforcement. So we've got a dedicated team of community speed enforcement officers that go out each day and provide a visible deterrent to drivers in marked vehicles and are focused on locations that either are hotspots for collisions, known areas in which vehicles are known to speed. So sometimes that is informed through our volunteer network and our wider community safety forums, but also then through engagement with local partners. And at the moment, what we are seeing is predominantly around 1,000 individuals being written to every month, drivers on the road, to highlight the offences that are being committed. And you can see there, just, and I'll share this slide deck with you all, just the breakdown of where that activity is taking place. Now we've been very honest with the public. We've presented where we will be. We genuinely believe in prevention in this area, and would far rather that people reduce their speed than actually us catching individuals speeding on our network. Now we have thresholds for the individuals that we do catch. Predominantly, we try and focus on speed awareness courses for the lower thresholds. And then, of course, as individuals and the speeds being committed increase, we then move up to obviously issuing points and then to court if necessary. I'll pause before coming on to the special constabulary.
Any questions, anyone? No questions here?
So our special constabulary is an area of continued improvement within Wiltshire Police. The work being conducted by the specials across the force is nothing short of remarkable. And you can see there this year, 5,800 hours given up to officers, time given up by officers that otherwise have full-time jobs, are otherwise responsible for other responsibilities in our community. So we currently have 54 active frontline specials. And they operate across a range of services, not just within neighbourhood policing, but actually we've now got specials operating within roads policing. We've got specials with response driving courses. And actually we've gone a step further by issuing additional courses and training to those specials, really investing in their development and recognising that actually we want them to work shoulder to shoulder with our frontline officers. And you'll see them very visible on our streets, but they have the same powers, same authority and same ability as our regular officers. But as I say, the work they are doing across our teams is remarkable. But this year we will continue to increase that volume, and I'm pleased to say we've got an intake in this spring and they'll be out with their communities in September. As I say, we're absolutely dedicated and committed to increasing that volume, recognising the significant contribution they provide. And of course, with specials, they bring a diversity of skills and experience from their private sector backgrounds into policing. So we have project managers, we have individuals from the MOD, we have technicians, IT experts, and actually just spending time with these individuals, they kind of then help and support the development of our wider cohort of officers. So staying on the forefront, staying on the subject of police volunteers, we continue to use our volunteers to great effect. And again, we've got a dedicated team recruiting, coordinating our policing volunteers. And again, tremendous support and work being undertaken, from supported community action initiatives to supporting role playing to make our kind of training more realistic for frontline officers. But actually, some of our volunteers support our justice services. So a real breadth of experience and insight from our police volunteers across the county. And really, it kind of goes to the heart of our mission, which is actually we want to represent the community, and volunteers are at the heart of that. And again, you'll see on the right there just an image of our volunteers doing a knife crime sweep in our parks in Swindon, in which knives were recovered from hidden locations. And actually that for me is critical if we are to reduce the risk of offending, and actually demonstrating to the communities how we're taking knife crime seriously, but also working with volunteers and members of the community to tackle these issues. You'll see there 146 hours of time given up to support Wiltshire Police in their wider mission. Police cadets, this is a fantastic piece of work. Last night I welcomed some additional 20 cadets into our service. And these are youngsters operating across 3 locations at Chippenham, Swindon and Trowbridge. So 47 across the 3 units. And of course, some have aspirations. These, young people have aspirations to join the police at a later date. Others, are using it as an opportunity to gain further experience and insight into their own standing and their own desires as their life goes forward. And speaking to them last night, it was tremendous in terms of seeing what their aspirations were going forwards. But actually, for us, we know that kind of communicating with the young people today is never more challenging. And actually, just speaking to the cadets last night, the ideas they had and the insight into matters like Instagram, Snapchat, and others, and providing us with insight into how to reach young people in our community, closes that gap. But actually, in addition to that, we plan to use them far more effectively. And we were talking only this week about the opportunities that when we have a series of burglaries, putting cadets in the subsequent weeks to actually do leaflet campaigns to support some of our test purchase operations to make sure licensed premises are operating effectively. So again, a further area of focus. But they've been tremendous and filled with enthusiasm, as you would expect. Finally, just to share with you our business crime retail partnership, supported by the Office of the Police Crime Commissioner, really engaging with our retail crime network. Now, retail crime, as many of you will know, has been at the forefront of the news. We are seeing prolific offenders commit significant crimes up and down the country. We know that these criminals travel. We know that some groups are organised and actually working with retailers to really improve our offer. And certainly one of the areas that we're focused on is a watch scheme. So we've been really clear we want a watch scheme in every town, supported by retailers, actually providing them with the radio network, providing them with the right tools to be able to communicate with us and close that gap. But also then, when we have prolific and problematic offenders, to really think about actually how we work with partners to tackle individuals that commit such crime, which includes issuing community behaviour orders, which then prevent individuals perhaps visiting certain areas, or working with partners to improve the digital transfer of CCTV, so improving our efficiency so we don't have to visit retailers and use up their valuable time, but also just improving that whole service that they receive in terms of investigations. And I'm pleased to say actually already we're seeing improvements with our detection rate when it comes to business crime. And it's very much one of our focus areas, working with the Business Crime Retail Partnership to improve that offer. And the Commissioner and I recently presented at one of those events in Salisbury around our plans going forwards. As I say, shop watches have been resurrected, and indeed we recognise our retailers are our eyes and ears, and actually there's an opportunity to close that gap. Chair, I will pause there just to afford an opportunity for questions, but I'm conscious I was given a 10-minute window, so
Yeah. Have you finished your slides, or do you have more?
I have. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay. Questions from the panel? Any questions at this stage? Councillor Henning.
Thank you, Chairman. Just on police cadets, I know in Chippenham that our police cadets were priced out of a venue where they used to muster. They said that they couldn't afford the hiked price at Frontwell Primary School anyway. So they've been looking for somewhere to muster, and they ended up in Corsham on an MOD property, which they got for nothing. But it made me wonder what the funding model was for the police cadets. I thought they had to. Did they have to buy their own uniforms or put something towards their uniforms? It was one of those things that I tried to find them a new venue or funding from somewhere, but it just popped up. So I've just asked the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henning. It is a great and pertinent question, because actually, yesterday I was talking about this issue. They are currently based in Corsham, and many of the cadets come from the Chippenham area, so we know they're kind of commuting and travelling further. They do pay £2 subs, which is similar to what we see in Air Cadets and Army Cadets, and actually that goes towards the fund. They have got a good fund, but actually finding a location has been a challenge. And I know that the kind of cadet leaders have been working with partners to try and identify a new location, but it's not without its challenges. And it's an area that certainly I've taken away in action yesterday to try and find a new location in Chippenham. So I'm open to ideas. If anyone's got any suitable locations, I'm very much open to ideas.
Thank you. I might come back to you on that.
Okay. Councillor Adam Cover.
Thank you, Joe. Just a quick question about specials. You said you have 54 active specials at the moment. I was just wondering, how does that number compare to other forces? How are we doing when it comes to specials?
So I think the number varies up and down the country. I think we could be better. I think the challenge is understanding the contribution from specials. So we've been really clear with our special constabulary that the specials that we've maintained today, those 54, are active, they're trained to a high standard and are undertaking their hours. What is really challenging when you look at other force models is understanding actually whether they have dormant specials, so specials on their books that actually undertake very few active patrol hours. And there isn't a national system for recording that. But we've been really clear, we want our specials to work shoulder to shoulder with our frontline officers. That's why we're kind of further investing in them. And as a consequence, whilst we have 54, I'm confident we have 54 active specials that are actively participating. I think that's a good number, but I don't think we're done, and hence us recruiting a further 20 in April this year. I think previously we focused on a higher number, and I think there was a kind of an aspiration to have beyond the 100 mark. But actually, we want quality. We want individuals that are participating in active duties. So it's a challenge that I don't know the answer to the question, because actually there are so many variants in terms of specials and the hours they undertake. Yeah. But thank you for your question.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm actually a colleague of mine. He's going to be part of your the new intake, so he's really excited about being a part of special constabulary.
It's brilliant, and no doubt they come with skills and insight. So it's brilliant. And at the attestation, when we see the specialists passing out and you listen to the backgrounds and the diversity of our special constabulary, it's fantastic, the insight they're providing us.
The PCC would like to come in with a comment at this stage.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. Yeah, just regarding the numbers, the Chief Constable has been working on increasing the numbers in our neighbourhood teams, apropos the encouragement from the government to do so. And she is planning to have 2 recruitment tranches of 20 specials each as soon as we can get the numbers. So there are plans in place to increase the numbers by another 40, but that might take some considerable time. It will depend on the effectiveness of our recruitment and the thirst that we have for people to join us.
Okay. Councillor Jeans.
Retail crime is something I take a lot of interest in, and I happened to be in Salisbury the other day in a large supermarket I won't name, and that I've come to hear that even the security guards only tackle them within this particular supermarket. Basically, they fill up a huge trolley and make a run for it. And it was mentioned the police was raised because it's the speed, because to catch them, once they're in the car park, I was assured nothing happens, they just drive away with it. Well, I'm sure you have got this in mind, and you've got, there's limits to what you can do, I can understand that, but it did occur to me, it comes back to the police on the street, presence, police being seen, and therefore it occurred to me that if a policeman was walking around in the car park occasionally, it would be a deterrent, but I'm sure you've got something in hand for quick response or something, but I thought you might expand on it.
So in Salisbury, for example, we have the Salisbury bid, and so our officers have got radios in addition to their police radios where they can connect directly with the retailers, improving their response and the gathering of intelligence and information. And visible policing is absolutely on the agenda this year to improve our visibility within the communities. And that, as the Commissioner mentioned, that further investment in neighbourhood policing to really put officers out on high visible patrol. And of course, you may know that the Antisocial Behaviour Hotspot Fund has been agreed for a further 12 months, and that's going to increase our visibility further. But we will, to reassure you, investigate each and every retail crime. So to put that myth to bed that we don't investigate low-level retail crime, we'll investigate every retail crime that gets reported. And we're actively encouraging those retailers to report. It is a challenge, particularly in a rural kind of county, to be everywhere. but actually putting the tools in place, such as the radio system, the store watch, and having those watch schemes, and having a better intelligence portal that we've just released, will make sure actually we're in the right place and serve a better chance of catching these individuals that do significant harm to our communities.
Thank you. Just to supplement Doug's answer, we obviously referenced the antisocial behaviour hotspot funding, which has been approved for another year. And obviously we had Safer Streets last year, and both of those schemes obviously are also working with community wardens in terms of providing that additional presence, both in Salisbury and in Trowbridge, working alongside then increased foot patrols from Wiltshire Police.
Yes, have Councillor Amin first, sir.
Thank you. Just on the antisocial behaviour hotspot hub, I just wanted to ask, how do you actually define a hotspot hub?
That's a really good question. So we've broken the county down into segments, and then we look at crime data, we look at intelligence, and we look at a range of metrics to understand actually where antisocial behaviour is being committed, including violent crime in a public space. We then look at the opportunities to patrol those areas, and actually we then kind of define several hotspots. So I think we're looking at 10 this year, where we'll kind of undertake active patrols. What we have seen, where we've identified previous hotspots, is a significant reduction in crime in those areas. So there is a demonstration that it works. But yes, we very much rely on intelligence, crime data, and a host of metrics. And I'm confident I'm not doing it justice, because there's some very intelligent people next door that are working on that. But there's a broad range of metrics to inform that. But again, for the antisocial behaviour hotspot, if you'd like us to come back and really get into the detail on that, I'll be happy to do.
Okay, did you want to come in on that?
I want to add a very clear point is that the Home Office set the criteria for the definition of those hotspots. We can share that with the panel post-meeting. That's helpful. Thank you.
Well, the reason I want to come back, Chairman, is when you look at hotspot and if it's based on crime data, my question is, the areas, the affluent areas, you will have better crime data because they report.
Yes.
Where in a deprived area, what we normally see is because they don't have enough confidence in policing, because of the past experience, they feel that what's the point of reporting? As a result, you will see there is no data. And in my opinion, these communities are losing on it. It should be, these are the areas where you have...
Can I just ask, is the reporting of crime one of the factors that comes into identifying hotspots?
It's looked at across the board. So the strategic assessment process that the Community Safety Partnership undertake is part of that definition process. So that there is a huge amount of data that's taken together. What is very specific is the Home Office are very strict around what qualifies under the criteria for this particular fund. That obviously only covers the patrols that are undertaken in those hotspots. It doesn't touch on the wider work that the force does across all of those areas, because it recognises from local intelligence and local engagement with the communities where those issues are.
So rather than a deeper dive into this, what I would say is that more work needs to be done in our communities to encourage people to report crimes, and obviously more work needs to be done with the police to make the reporting of crime as easy as possible. And before I come on to Councillor Henning and Councillor Manro, hang on, before I come on to those two questions, I had to report a crime recently. It was followed up, and once the report had been made, the response was great. But the process of reporting it online was tiresome in the extreme. We all know why, because of the Home Office paperwork that's required. But once the report had been made, the response was fantastic, and hopefully not just because I'm the chairman of the Police and Crime Panel, but because it was a group of lads who were going around the town doing criminal damage to a number of properties at the same time. Sorry, did you want to come back with a follow-up question?
Just obviously, as I've just mentioned, the confidence in policing in areas of deprivation is quite low, and I just wanted to know whether the police are doing anything to improve that confidence to the public, to ensure that they do report crimes.
PCC.
If I, of course, we are doing a huge amount of outreach, but most important, it is that we do have more people in the neighbourhood teams who do respond more quickly and more effectively to crime. When it comes to outreach, I will be in one of your parishes tonight giving them an update of what is happening and why they should report more crime, because there was that syndrome. What's the point? What's the point of reporting crime? Well, there is a point now, because Wiltshire Police does respond and responds effectively. So it's getting that message over. We've discussed this many times in terms of it is a major priority of my office and me to, not just to make Wiltshire safer, but to make the residents of Wiltshire and Swindon feel safer. So that's why that's why I'll be in Swindon tonight talking, I think, can't remember which parish, North Central, I think.
Central North. Okay. Okay, so it's a recognised issue and it is being addressed. Councillor Henry, do you have a follow-up question? Short question.
About this topic, it's something on the business.
Right, okay, can we come back to it later?
If the discussion
Is it on this agenda item?
Oh, yes.
Carry on then.
It's the business. Yeah. Yeah, it's just on the business crime. It's the I know in Chippenham and in Calne there are shop watch, and they have shop watch radios so that they can communicate. Watch out for the bloke in the blue jacket or whatever. But I find that a lot of them, those radios, they end up in the back of the shop, uncharged. The turnover of staff in the shop, the training isn't there, and I think a lot of them do tend to drift. And I just wondered if there was who follows up with those sort of things. Is it?
Doug, by all means, answer that question, and then I'll come back in.
I think with every watch scheme, there has to be a coordination. It has to be a partnership approach. I don't, and whilst, our PCSOs, our officers are undertaking those patrols, will encourage people to use the radio network. Actually, it's through the coordination of those watch schemes that we encourage retailers to use it. And actually, the more effective we demonstrate that the system is, the more people are really inclined to use it. So we've absolutely put retail crime on the map in terms of a priority for the force. And as I say, the outcomes are improving. And I think what we'll see is, with that confidence growing, we'll see more people using it. But as I say, it's a partnership approach.
Thank you, Chair.
So the point I was going to make is that all crime reporting and all policing is a partnership approach between the community, including the business community, and the police themselves. I've said this on numerous occasions. If people want a better police force, they have to play their part in having a better police force. All I would say is, if they are taking those radios and putting them in the back of the shop and forgetting how to use them and not putting them on charge, it's probably because the problem isn't as big as the perception of the problem is. Councillor Mamro.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is on retail crime. How many crimes are sent to the courts, or do they end up just getting a police caution and let off? Thank you.
Doug, do you know the answer to that?
I haven't got the figure in front of me, but what I would say is we do look for opportunities to resolve the matter outside of court where it is suitable. And of course, particularly for first-time offenders or young people, actually it's not always appropriate to send them into the court. We risk kind of blocking up the justice system, but also we want to give opportunities to these individuals, restorative opportunities to these individuals to correct their behaviour. And that could include, for example, we offer online courses for individuals undertaking shoplifting, particularly for first-time offenders. But it depends very much on the threshold, it depends on the harm, and it depends on the previous interaction with that individual. But again, what we do within that process is highlight those issues to partners through the MASH to make sure actually it is not just a single kind of service approach, that we're linking into partners to make sure that partners are cited on the risk associated with those offences. Because of course, in the background, we are aware of the exploitation risk with young people. So it's not always appropriate to send individuals to court. Where we have serial offending, where we have persistent and problematic offenders, of course we will consider putting them in front of a court. But we do kind of leaning towards restorative opportunities where it is appropriate.
Okay, Councillor Jeans.
Very quick, I know the meeting's getting drawn out. It's just that I want to raise something to bring it home, that at our area board, we had the police present, I'm sure it was the area board, but I've raised a point before that although the police figure shows retail crime is dropping, I honestly believe that is the lack of reporting, because I run a business with 3 shops in a small area, much smaller than Salisbury, and lots of it we just cannot report, and that the local co-op has got to hide the meat behind the counters now in the last few months. Our friend across here was very kind, the Police and Crime Commissioner, Philip. He somehow managed to get the police to attend, to be fair. So I know you're doing all you can, but I'm afraid that I got to challenge as to where it's actually fallen. Your figures may show that, but as I said, I've made investigations of my own, gone to the big supermarkets in Salisbury, talked to people. So where it's urban or where it's rural, I'm not convinced it's falling.
And just, Chair, if I may, just a point of clarity, detections are going up for retail crime, but I don't celebrate the reduction in the reporting of crime because of that reason, because we know there is a hesitation to report. What we do know is, particularly for the large retailers, they have their own internal recording systems prior to contacting the police service. And actually what we're doing through the Retail Crime Partnership is looking at joining up some of these systems to ensure that actually for the retailer it becomes a far more efficient process to report that crime. So reducing the barriers that are in place to ensure that actually people are more likely to report those crimes than leading to an investigation. We want to investigate all crime, as I said earlier, and we recognise that some of the internal audit work that gets undertaken by these larger retailers sometimes leads to additional administrative tasks being placed on store managers and keepers.
Okay, PCC.
Thanks. Just again to supplement what Doug has been saying. On the 1st of April, we will be starting a new pilot retail crime strategy in Salisbury with the bid using a new app that you can put on your phone called Disc, which will allow shopkeepers to report crime directly into the control and communication centre. And, you know, that will speed up the response times. But also, you know, we are still struggling to get the message out through area boards and more broadly that when the neighbourhood team inspector goes to area boards, they do put up a slide on which they have your local NBT, neighbourhood team, contact details on it, and you can contact them directly. So we are working really hard to improve our ability to communicate and respond. But like you, I'm also hugely sceptical of statistics.
Can I just ask a question regarding retailers' associations, chambers of commerce and those sorts of things? How much interaction do you have with those sorts of business associations, and how much more work could they do to help make sure that this is a more sort of higher profile and more reported issue?
We have a significant interaction with them all and liaise with them through Doug and through the retail business crime strategy. And we will, for example, in Salisbury, we'll be holding a roundtable briefing to make sure that as many shopkeepers, from local shop owners to the major retailers, turn up at that meeting so that we can brief and encourage them to use the systems that we're putting in place.
The reason I ask that question is I know there is no Chamber of Commerce in Rawwood and Bassett. It disappeared about 12, 18 months ago. Is there a Chamber of Commerce active in Swindon? If so, well, if not, there should be. And if there is, then let's make sure that they play their part. Councillor Amina, I think you have another question.
Just a very quick one, Mr. Chairman. I think I've heard that there's 10 hotspots identified this year. I'm just wondering whether we can, whether the police can share what those hotspots are.
Yeah, could you share a map of where those hotspots are?
Yeah, we're just in the process of finalising those plans. They'll be submitted to the Home Office, which is part of our process. As soon as that's done, we can obviously share those with the panel.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no further questions, then thank you very much, Doug, for a very interesting presentation. The more questions that are generated by a presentation, the better it was. So well done. You have a huge number of questions there. Thank you for everything you do.
Chair, thank you for your time, and thank you to the panel.
Let you crack on. Okay. Right, we will now move on to agenda item 6, the PCC quarterly plan delivery update. And over to you, Philip.
Thank you very much, Chair. Before I go into the plan, which I hope you've all read, just a couple of strategic issues. One is you've already heard that we are very fortunate in that we have been given another £1 million by the government for antisocial behaviour hotspots. We have had our Safer Streets funding renewed for another year. So that is seriously helpful. We are still struggling in order to balance the books, and you will have seen that that will require the closing of 2 police stations, which are both old and pretty derelict and scruffy. But we will be retaining the same numbers as officers and staff. There are no plans to make any redundancies, which, if you look across the other most similar police forces in the country, they are both closing police stations and making redundancies. So we are closing 2 police stations. We are still pushing forward with the option for a Southern Hub. And please don't ask me when that's going to happen, because I have been pushing hard, as you know, for a long time, but it's tied into planning and other commercial considerations. So overall, and in light of the fact that the government has proposed a new crime and sentencing bill, which is very thorough and is going to increase police powers, so we are very much supporting it. The situation on the enforcement side is looking quite positive nationally, but in particular in Wiltshire, because we, as I say, are going to retain the same numbers of officers and staff. There are some challenges within the criminal justice sector. I've very recently, a few days ago, had a letter from the Justice Minister. The prisons are full again. And I've also been told by the Minister of Justice that there is for financial reasons, they're going to have to limit the court listing days that are available to push people through the criminal justice system. So in many ways, that sets a difficult context. But when you look at the police and crime, the quarterly report, you will see that our out-of-court resolutions have increased. And as Doug was explaining, that's how we hold people to account, first-time minor offenders, rather than pushing them into what is already an overloaded criminal justice system. Yesterday, I was at a meeting in London on rural crime with Lord Hanson, the Minister of State from the Home Office, and he confirmed that funding would continue for some of our specialist projects, not only antisocial hotspots, safer streets, serious violence duty, but also we collectively have been funding a national rural crime unit, and the funding for that national rural crime unit will continue because, as I briefed you before, we have some very serious organised crime gangs operating within not just Wiltshire, but also across the southwest and nationally. And that was the reason why I started Operation Ragwort. which was an intelligence and evidence-led collaboration of the 5 police forces in the southwest to tackle those organised crime gangs engaged in rural, acquisitive, hair-coursing, poaching activities. That Operation Ragwort has now expanded to 5 for 2 other police forces. And at the most recent Ragwort 2 weeks ago, we had 7 police forces operating in Wiltshire in order to try and reduce, apprehend, interdict criminal activity in the rural areas. So a lot going on. So if we look at the quarterly report, which I hope you've all had time to read, the statistics are generally positive, as we have mentioned before, but we are all skeptical of statistics, but I am confident that across the board, in all 4 police priorities, we are making improvements. As the Chief Constable and I are also fully aware, there are still areas within Wiltshire Police Force where we are not making the progress where we would wish to do so. And we still have a lot of work to do when it comes to criminal investigation, the production of case files of a standard that will go to the CPS and be accepted without coming back for revision. We continue to invest in technical data, robotic means to improve the quality of the case files. But it is slightly depressing when I then brief that, and you probably know that, that court days are going to be reduced and that we're not going to push 3 people through the system anyway because the prisons are full up. So it is of concern. But rather than going through the detail of the quarterly report, I hope you've all read, I think it would be much simpler if I took any questions that you had.
Thank you, Philip. And I'll come in with the first question. And yes, all the stats seem to be going generally in the right direction with just a few outliers. And one of the outliers that concerned me was the RASO rate, the number of crimes, RASO and the detection rate going in the wrong direction as well. Is there a reason for this? Is this explicable? And what's going to be the response?
I will let Rob come in detail as he will be giving a presentation on our commissioning services and our victim and witness support systems. But the overall picture is tricky in terms of our fat rate is going up, our prosecution rates are going up.
And not according to the
for violence and domestic abuse.
Looking at RASO.
So that's an improvement, and the overall fat rate is up, but only a minor amount.
Yeah, I'm looking at just the RASO, not the violence against women and girls.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, yes. You said on the slide, yeah. There's a small decrease in terms of that RASO rate. I suppose there's a couple of elements which we need to track, and of course, it's within the sort of the normal variations you'd expect, because remember, with these numbers of crimes, they're not huge numbers in terms of volume of crime. Sure. But of course, the level of seriousness is there, and of course, building those case files and prosecuting those crimes have a range of complexities and difficulties. So what we try to look at is that longer term trend in terms of that work. So again, it's just anticipating that there may well be normal variations just because of those challenges and work.
Yes.
The important thing is to say, I suppose it's significantly higher than it has been historically, because I think again we were sort of around the 3.5% mark. So it's consistently higher. And of course, there's a lot of governance and structure around the review of those cases, both within the police, the CPS, and with the courts.
Yeah, so where I'm coming from, I can understand that the actual RASO rate has gone up 3.5%, the number of crimes, which is from 50 to 56, something like that, which, okay, small numbers each of those, of course, is a human story, and therefore we can't just reduce it to numbers. But that is, in statistical terms, 3.5% is 6 cases here. If you're telling me that because of that increase, the fat rate has gone down because it takes some time to investigate and then produce the outcome, then that is statistically understanding. If that's what you're saying, then that's absolutely fine. We can understand that. It goes back, though, to what is driving this, not just an increase, but a lack of a decrease in the number of RASO crimes. We're looking to decrease the crime rates. So whenever they go up, it's not just a small increase, it's a bigger increase above where we want to be.
I think similarly, in terms of very similar to domestic abuse, in terms of RASO crimes, actually we're not probably focused just on whether the number is going up or down, because obviously there's a significant, it's a national issue. There's significant issues of confidence of reporting that and probably more so than other crime types in terms of the complexities of that work. So the key thing, I think, for the force is that fact rate rather than it going up or down in terms of the volume. What we want to see actually is everyone to have the confidence to report, particularly in this space. So I think actually an increase, a bit like domestic abuse, it's, okay, I'm not saying we could say we're not celebrating both sides, but I think actually it's important that confidence is there.
So rather than drill down just the numbers, I guess the real question here is, are you confident that the force is doing all that it can and all that it should be doing to address the RASO crime rate and the RASO fat rate?
If I am confident that the force is doing everything that they can with the resources that we've got, and I don't mean that to sound mealy-mouthed, but I think philosophically, I think what is of concern is societal trends, and when we look at some recent TV programs like The Adolescents, and we look at some of the sexist behaviour being encouraged by influencers, it is something that should be of general concern to all of us in the way that society is becoming more degenerate than it has for a variety of different reasons. I would like to think, because of the priority that the Chief, with my support, gives to RASO, that we will continue to improve our fat rates, but that the incident of rape and serious sexual offences is beyond the scope of Wiltshire Police Force. It's a societal issue, which I think it certainly worries me.
Okay, so I think just I would question whether it's completely beyond the influence of this police force. Are there things we could be doing in terms of more engagement with schools, talking to teenage boys at school? Is there more that we can be doing about providing positive male role models within our communities? More that we can do in terms of encouraging more people to get into other organisations, such as sports, such as cadets, where those positive male role models might exist. So there's things that can be done. It's not just down to the police, it's down to schools, it's down to parents, it's down to society as a whole. But I think there is more that can be done. But I'll leave that with you, because there are others who want to ask questions, I'm sure.
I will be visiting a new youth centre in Swindon after this, because we do need to encourage young people. We do need to give young people mentors. And, we invest, as you'll hear when Rob briefs, significantly in all of that. But it's whether we can actually, all of the initiatives, that we are all taking, because of a generation, we have a concern for what's happening with and amongst our younger generations. Can we in fact manage that without a significant increasing of funding across the board? I don't know. Across all of the youth services, which we know have been significantly reduced with all local authorities. Yeah. It's a very big issue.
it is a huge issue, and all sorts of things like culture and cultural heritage come into it as well. Councillor Henning.
Yeah, very good comments from you, Chairman. It's what is going on in my mind all the time, and your own comments too, Commissioner, on that very tricky subject, and it is a societal issue, and it does need to be addressed through the early intervention and getting to young men in through schools and everything that you said, Chairman. I'm really pleased that the serious violence funding is carrying on these funding streams. I was really concerned that they weren't going to be. Oh my God, what would we do? Especially for things like independent domestic violence advocates and someone who's had very good support through there. So yeah, that area. I mean, I was going to mention that, Chairman, but you've done it probably better than I could. So
yeah, okay. Any other questions, Councillor? Oh, sorry, Councillor. I mean, then Councillor Adam Cover.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. My question is on, I think it's on priority 4, victim rights compliance. 35% of respondents stated they were not told a final outcome. Now, I understand that has always been the case in Wiltshire Police, but I've also seen that the 38.4% have stated that they have been told the final outcome. And I just wanted to ask, I mean, of that 38%, I mean, do we know what percentage actually are satisfied with the outcome? And I also know, obviously, they can have a review if they are not satisfied, whether they are giving the options that they have a chance to review the outcome if they are not satisfied. And if that is the case, what the percentage of people are actually asking for a review?
I'm sorry, but I don't have those statistics offhand. But you are right to raise the issue, because the Chief Constable and I both know that our response to both victims and to witnesses is not as good as it should be. And in many ways, that's the front line of our public service. It is to engage with and to go back, and we are not good. And of course, you let me know that. I mean, I get probably 5 or 6 emails into my personal inbox each week where people contact me directly because they've not been satisfied with the follow-up service that they've been given, and I chase the force on their behalf. The Chief Constable is very aware of that, and that is a major priority area for her to improve.
No, I think you wanted to come in.
Thank you. It was just to supplement that. I haven't got the figures for you, Councillor, so forgive me on that. But I think as the PC has said, both the PC and the Chief, it's not an acceptable level of performance, but actually the positive overall picture means we can now really drill down and focus on improving in these key areas. So this is a matter we are discussing with the force in terms of how we can improve this, because they've made efforts, but it has not stuck for whatever reason. There may be numerous reasons in that. We need to understand that more. And critically, the measure is, have you been contacted and informed? Now that, regardless of the outcome, you should have been contacted. So I would expect that to be nearer 100%, if I'm honest, in terms of that completion of that work. But we're looking at ways we can do that, because we're not quite clear, is that the type of conversation that officers are having with the public, and it's just not quite understood to then respond in the survey, or actually it's just not happening? And how do we both track that, but how can we also make that potentially more automated for the benefit of victims as well, so they can see their case? So there's a system in Humberside, which I think that nationally they're very keen to try and roll out, which is just a victim portal where you can go in and log in and see the progress of your crime as well. So again, it's looking at different ways of doing that to both ensure it happens, because I think it's an obligation of a police service to keep people who are victims updated, but can we make that in a bit easier and work? And that's a key piece of the investigative improvement work that Rob is leading and contributing on behalf of our side, and also led by the Deputy Chief Constable for this next year coming.
Okay, Councillor Adam Cover.
Thank you, Chair. I was actually going to ask about the same matter, priority 4 and the levels of victim satisfaction, because it still seems to be an issue. there was a drop. There's also issue about victims being updated. So it sounds like you're still kind of trying to figure out what steps need to be taken. So maybe it would be good once you understand what you're going to be doing, maybe bring more detailed update. So that would be probably quite useful, I think.
Okay.
And also, the second question. In your update, Commissioner, you said not to ask about the Southern Policing Hub, so I'm actually going to ask you about this.
Well, you know, so we have the two options and they're still open, High Post or Old Sarum. The preferred option is Old Sarum. That's preferred by the police force and also the residents of the south of the county, and in particular Salisbury, because it's very close and the location offers us 6 acres very close to the park and ride as you go in to Salisbury from the north. So it's pretty convenient for people. Last year, the first issue that arose when it came to planning permission was that the new legislation that came in for BND, biodiversity net gain. We had to do a new environmental survey, which cost money, to see if there were any three-legged newts or whatever that there were to be on the site. That was conducted, and then it was discovered there was no electrical infrastructure on the site for a police station or anything else for that matter. So we've had to have a new spur, electrical spur laid to that site by Southern Electricity. That site is now, that electricity is now in sight. We are going for principal planning, which with Wiltshire Council, that I am told we will have by the end of June.
Sorry, just for clarification, that's not planning, that is around the purchase of commercial on the site. So again, I think we're at the latter stages of that discussion, but I don't think we can say much more.
Sorry, you're at the latter stages of the purchase of the site, did you say? So just in terms of those of you who don't sit on planning committees, the first stage, of course, is to have an in-principle discussion with the planning authority to see whether or not they're likely to grant consent. Have you had that yet?
No.
So you've not submitted
no, Chair. Well, we've had informal conversations. Again, to be honest, I don't want to talk about this in a public forum at this point. If I'm
okay, then let's terminate the conversation regarding planning and regarding acquisition. Let's just say that you're working on it, okay? And that's what we can, as much as we want to say at this stage. Okay, good. I had Councillor. Sorry, was that your last question, Councillor Henning?
Yeah. Hopefully, any new facility would be partially solar powered, so to keep up with.
Councillor,
Let's not go there because that's all part of the planning application process, and it's unfair to press on that.
Are we just dipping into this report because I'm
what we're doing is asking questions on this quarterly report, and then we'll vote to note it.
I'm just on the road safety aspect of things. I know the road safety partnership does continue to be very active. And I'll come back to this thorny question of speed indicator devices and auto speed watch and all those things. I've been to a parish forum recently where the chief was there over in Christian Mulford, and all the parishes are totally. They seem to be at a loss about speeding. And I know we've been through this before, and I know the position that Wiltshire Police has taken on it, but I think there could be more to be done to enable the parish councils to have their speed indicator devices, which may be ANPR, so that they can actually...
Ross, can I cut across you there? Later on the agenda, we'll be looking at reports to bring forward to future meetings. Yeah. And one of the potential reports is road safety, when all of this can be investigated and reported back on. Are you okay with us leaving it there.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm
just
just
when-
I'm
when-
raising it on behalf of the
Yeah.
parishes more than myself.
Later, when we come to that agenda item, I'll be asking people to vote for their favourite
Yes.
thing. So I assume you'll vote for road safety as one of the topics to bring back for discussion.
I have noted that, Chairman.
Okay, all right.
Also, yeah.
Is there another question?
Well, it's I'm pleased that I've said before the Safer Streets funding ending in March, but the hotspot funding I saw somewhere in there I saw 200 meters. Is that 200 square meters or 200 meters by 200 meters, which would make it 4,000?
It's a hexagon shaped, to be very, very specific.
With a
to the Home
diameter of
Office
200 meters.
guidelines, yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Philip, did you want to come in on something?
Just that last point, very, very quickly. We have already decided, because of the confusion about SIDS and Auto Speed Watch, that we will be conducting a major workshop where we will be inviting all interested stakeholders to a full briefing that we will conduct with with Wiltshire Council and Swindon Borough Council in order to better inform individuals. I had proposed doing it earlier in the year, but we decided to delay until after the elections.
Very good idea.
And we will then be hosting a major conference and we'll sort all these issues out.
Okay, thank you. I have no more questions.
Yeah.
Is it a question?
I've read. I was up till 1 o'clock this morning.
Is it a
reading this,
question?
highlighting my way through the agenda.
Ross, I ask you again. Is it a question?
Yes, I can turn it into a question.
Can you turn it into a very short question?
I mean, I'm looking through the risks and issues on criminal justice, and what are the reductions in planned court sittings throughout the remainder of 24-25? Why is that happening? I mean, you have said yourself just now that the whole criminal justice system is pretty.
Okay, so that's the question.
In a mess.
What's happening and why?
Yeah. Why are these? Because
Yep.
you have offenders
Philip,
waiting for a
Okay,
year.
Rob,
Philip, over to you.
Waiting for a year.
It's resources and people. It's resources and qualified people. And Jake, you.
Councillor Mamro can come in here out of personal
Thank you.
experience.
This is from my personal experience. Up to about last year, I used to sit twice a month. Now it's hardly every 2 months. So we don't have legal advisors. So staffing is an issue now going forward, and prisons being full as well. So Crown Court's got big backlog of cases and they're now pushing it back down to magistrates to decide. But we have big problems as well. So that's where we are, staff and resources. You're absolutely right.
Okay, and I don't think we're going to be able to answer those questions in this room because this panel has no authority.
I was just going to confirm, obviously it's not a decision by the Police and Crime Commissioner or within his remit. It is a decision by the Secretary of State of Justice.
And in the interest of keeping the meeting short and to the point, it absolutely does. But it absolutely does. But there's nothing we can do about it in this room. So, could I have somebody to propose that we note the report? Thank you, Councillor Nash. A seconder. Councillor Manro, I'll take. Thank you. All those in favour? Any against? That was unanimous. Thank you. Right, let's move on to agenda item 7, OPCC commissioning grants and partnerships. We have a presentation. Is it you, Rob?
Yes. Could I just? It will be Rob.
Okay.
I'd just like to acknowledge all the hard work that Rob and his team put in order to perform the function of the office of the PCC, as you have encouraged me. Rob and his team is now deeply embedded in the management and performance structures of Wiltshire Police Force. And to do that effectively, we need to be embedded in the community safety partnerships, both with Swindon and with Wiltshire Council. And Rob and his team have been looking at best practice and amalgamating and improving, coordinating the activities of both community safety partnerships. So I just wanted to put that on the record.
Over to you, Rob.
Thank you, and good morning, panel. You will have seen the report in your pack, so I'm not going to go through it in great detail. I'm keen to give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you have. What I propose to do is just give a very quick overview of the financial position in particular, and then just pick out a couple of highlights that I think are worth sharing in relation to the three portfolios that the report describes. In relation to the funding, just worth clarifying a couple of points. So, firstly, we have been successful, as indeed other OPCCs have been, in securing funding for the Ministry of Justice Victims Grant and the Home Office grants for serious violence and for hotspot policing, as we've described earlier in the meeting. The government have taken the decision to not continue Safer Streets funding, so that is ceasing. What that means for our overall position this year, we are in a situation where we're essentially looking at a £250,000 reduction in our overall funding envelope. That's primarily because of those reductions in grants from the government. What the PCC has agreed to do is to increase the funding that we have for our large contracts, which is the Sexual Assault Referral Centre, our Horizon Victim and Witness Care Team, and the custody healthcare contracts, because those are our large contracts. Those costs increase year on year, so we have to fund them in order to continue delivery. What that means for the next financial year is that we are just over £6 million in commissioning funds available. And what that enables us to do is to continue much of the good work which is outlined in the report for this financial year. And just to highlight, this year has been the largest amount of commissioning we've done in the OPC's history. So I think we're pleased at the opportunity to deliver the activities that are outlined in the report. If I just touch very briefly on the three portfolios and highlight a couple of key areas for your consideration. Firstly, around victims and vulnerability, I would pull out two main points here. One is around the review of our Horizon Witness and Care review that we've undertaken this year. That really goes to the heart of the conversation we had earlier about our work with the force to improve the way in which we are supporting victims. So we've heard already about the impacts on the courts. That means we are caring for victims for longer because of the system and the delays that are inherent in the criminal justice system at the moment. What we're very mindful of is that Horizon team has been in place for 10 years. It's right and proper that we take the opportunity to review how that is working, whether the model is correct, and what the support, how that support is best delivered. Naji mentioned already the idea of this digital portal, which is being utilised by forces elsewhere in the country. We think that has some real benefits. And that work is being done in collaboration with the force to ensure that the work they're doing to improve their officer contact is joined up with the way in which the Horizon team works with victims. The other area that I would highlight in this portfolio is the Sexual Assault Referral Centre Forensic Accreditation. This is a complex area where we are meeting new national forensic standards. Because of the fact that our SARC is hosted in a PFI building, that adds additional contractual complexities. We're working those through, and we're making sure that we're getting value for money on the investment we're making into that SARC. Again, though, I think this has highlighted a national problem around the provision of sexual assault referral centres. They are clearly very specialist in their undertaking. The resources required to staff them is very specialist, and the costs associated with delivery of these services are increasing. And I think there's now a national conversation about how as a criminal justice system, we support victims as they move through those processes. We aim to have the work completed in time to meet the October deadline that has been set nationally around that forensic accreditation. However, there is ongoing conversations because we know nationally a number of SARCs are really going to struggle to hit that deadline. So we'll continue those conversations over the next few months. If I can move on to our criminal justice and reoffending portfolio, the two areas I would pick out here, I think, are the right care, right person work that we've undertaken in the last 12 months. This is the national rollout where we have worked in partnership with local health boards, local authorities and others to support the right appropriate care for those individuals that are suffering from mental health challenges and illnesses. I think the positive thing I would praise the force, their relationships with local providers is such that actually this has been a really seamless transition locally. I think that's not the case everywhere. Certainly in London, there's been some really significant challenges around those relationships. The investment the force have made in maintaining those processes and those relationships mean that we've been able to implement right care, right person really effectively locally. We have an ongoing partnership group that meets on a regular basis, and I'm really pleased to say that we've had no issues or concerns raised from mental health partners, local authorities or health colleagues around that transition. So I think that's a really positive process, but we'll continue to work with those partners going into next year. The other area that I would just flag, and we've again touched on it already this morning, is around the prisoner release and the challenges that the prison population is creating within the criminal justice system. How that impacts on us locally is as we come to support prisoners as they're released from detention, we are clearly seeking to support them into housing and into employment, because we know that those two factors are really the fundamental key points that are so critical in enabling them to change their behaviours and essentially break that cycle of offending. Locally, that's really difficult because of the lack of appropriate housing availability. We obviously work closely with probation and the local authority housing teams. I literally had a meeting with the Wiltshire head of housing literally earlier this week, and the provision of local stock is a real issue. So supporting people into appropriate housing where those wraparound services can be helpful, it continues to be difficult. But we are investing some real efforts in bringing together as many partners as we possibly can do into this space, and also building engagement with local employers to help those pathways to employment, which we know help offenders break that cycle and behavioural patterns when they are released from prison. Finally, I'll just move on to our community safety and youth area. The 2 points I would flag here are, this is primarily where we have a lot of Home Office grant funds, and we've done extensive commissioning in the last 12 months, which has been highlighted in the report, which I think we are really pleased with the delivery that we've been able to achieve this year. Where I think if I could wave a magic wand with the Chancellor ahead of today's statement would be actually to have that certainty of funding for future years. What we really struggle to do effectively is to plan our interventions if we don't have good understanding of what the future funding arrangements are. And I think this year in particular, we raised at the last meeting the risk around we didn't have any certainty of those grant funds until very late in the day. We've had sort of 5 weeks to be able to develop those plans for the serious violence duty and those hotspot arrangements. And frankly, it's putting pressure on our suppliers and our partners in this space to work at that sort of pace. Now, we will do that, obviously, but just the very short-term nature of funding means that it's difficult to sustain some of this delivery over the long term, and actually we lose the opportunity to realise some of these really important benefits. The final area I'll just touch on, the Commissioner highlighted it at the start of this item, is around our work on the community safety partnerships. This is fundamentally the vehicle and the model where we engage and convene partners across the criminal justice community safety space to work effectively together. We recognise that I don't think the Swindon and the Wiltshire community safety partnerships have been as effective as they possibly can be in the past. So we have spent a lot of time focused on transforming those partnerships this year, supporting those statutory agencies with developing new strategies and particularly new structures. And the focus for this year will be on actually embedding those new structures because fundamentally the value of those arrangements are in bringing the partners together to tackle some of these problems. We know that we can't solve these as individual agencies. The value is in those partnership conversations. So those will be important areas of focus for us next year, and I'd be keen to bring back an update to the panel in future around the work that we've delivered in that space. Chair, I'll pause there. I'm very happy to take any questions.
Okay. Questions now. I know Ross has 25 questions, so I'll come on to you in a minute. Councillor Nash.
This may not be a question for this panel, but that's why I'm asking it. With regards to the prison release and the housing issues and all the rest, is there any kind of, or rather, who is responsible for monitoring of that situation and that the people, supposing those people who have been rehoused then start causing some sort of antisocial behaviour affecting neighbours? Is there any role here or for probation service to deal with that, or is that simply down to landlord?
So it's a combination of things. It depends on the nature of the release requirements on the individuals. Fundamentally, prisoners released are responsibility of probation, and they will work closely with local housing providers and the local authority to monitor and manage behaviour. I think the conversation I was having recently with the head of housing in Wiltshire is where potentially individuals are being placed into housing that is not necessarily appropriate. The behaviour that then needs to be tackled is very difficult and challenging. And if those wraparound support arrangements aren't in place effectively, then clearly individuals are likely to fall back into cycles of patterns of behaviour. So it is a partnership approach, and there's absolutely requirements on probation to support individuals, but ultimately all partners play a role in this, and it's overseen by the Wiltshire Criminal Justice Board, which the Commissioner chairs.
Thank you. Let's land up over.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation and for the report. I have a few questions. So the first one is in relation to Horizon Review. You mentioned it was independent review. So I was just wondering who led the report, and if you could tell us a bit more about what those recommendations are.
Yeah, absolutely. So we brought in a specialist consultant to undertake that independent review. We felt that it was important that we had that independent approach. What the review highlighted is, first of all, that the team do fantastic and excellent work. That's clear from the feedback we get from individuals that are supported by that team, but also anecdotally from partners as well. In particular, the Crown Prosecution Service have highlighted the value that they find that the Horizon team deliver. What the review identified, though, is that there has been a shift in the resource allocation within that system. So if you think about, if that's the Horizon is the hub, it's the first point of contact for victims. Effectively, once they come into that system, they are then supported through the process until they either go to court or the case is ended. Where we've seen a shift of resources towards the back end of that process to support victims, particularly through the court delays. And actually what we're seeing is we don't want to get to a place where we are seeing impacts on the quality of that first contact with victims. So what we are looking at is making sure that partner agencies are playing their part properly in supporting victims through that criminal justice process, and that our resources remain dedicated and focused on the front door, that first contact. The other areas are around potentially improving our restorative justice model within Wiltshire. So at the moment, the team that deliver that are very specialist, they're very experienced, but it means they take on quite complex cases, small numbers of cases that are very complex. We'd like to look at how we can broaden that out to include more volume restorative cases. And there's also some improvements we want to make around the governance and management of Horizon itself. Obviously, as an OPCC, we have the opportunity to commission any provider to deliver that service. We currently do that through Wiltshire Police because there's obvious benefits to doing it through the force. But I think over time, the governance and control arrangements have just got a bit grey. We want to make sure there's real clarity over the management and leadership of that service, which is through the OPCC on behalf of the Commissioner, rather than through the force. And we want to make sure that those lines of governance are clear. So that will be part of our improvement plan for this year.
Thank you for that. Another question in relation to victim support. Are there any plans looking at specific support for victims of stalking? Because I believe last year there was a review around police response to stalking, and there was a recommendation for PCCs and police forces to look into what more tailored specific support could be provided. So I was wondering if there's anything like that taking place in Wiltshire Force.
Yeah, there absolutely is. So what we have within Horizon actually is a dedicated member of staff who is specifically looking at supporting victims of stalking. So in the same way that we have the national model around independent domestic violence advisors and advocates, we have now looked at locally commissioning Horizon to deliver a dedicated stalking advocate who is working with victims of stalking. I think what's becoming clear through, and you'll see it through the crime reporting levels, is that stalking, the cases continue to rise. So we have to look at what that demand looks like in the future, because we recognise that we need to support victims through what is a very, very distressing and challenging crime to be a victim of. So we have made that provision, but we continue to keep that under review.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a very complex area. And last question, if I may, in relation to Sexual Referral Centre, obviously there are the new accreditation. So I understand it's quite complex with the PFI building. So what is the current level of the risk of not being compliant by the time October comes?
Yeah, so we're working through the detailed specifications that the building regulations require us to make in terms of changes to the flow within the SARC. That's the changes we have to make. I think the risk is low at the moment because effectively nationally there is a recognition that there'll be a number of SARCs that will not hit that deadline. We still plan to. We have plans in place to make sure that those works are completed by October. And I think nationally there's a recognition that the Crown Prosecution Service in particular recognise that we can't be in a situation where we're shutting SARCs and not supporting victims in response to those kind of crimes. So we're confident that we have the plans in place to make those changes. But I think there is actually a national conversation about that deadline and whether that's achievable for all SARCs across the country.
Thank you so much.
As a follow-up to that, is there an opportunity here, if we are ready and there are others who are not, is there an opportunity for outsourcing and getting some income from neighbouring forces that may not be in such a good position?
So Gloucestershire already actually are compliant, which is our local relationship that we have, because essentially the SARCs are commissioned through NHS and by the OPCCs for Swindon and Gloucestershire jointly. So we work already across boundaries within the southwest, and it doesn't work on an income sort of based model. So that isn't really an opportunity, but we continue to work in a collaborative way with local forces to make sure we support each other where SARCs aren't available for any reason.
Okay. Philip.
Just to add to that, with the impending disbandment of National Health Service, NHS England, all the PCCs, OPCCs in the southwest are doing basically a risk assessment to look for not only identify risk, but also opportunities that there might be in terms of better sharing of resources in coordinating our activities. And Najee will be leading on that.
Thank you. Councillor Henning, how many questions do you have, and are they all short questions?
It remains to be seen. Chairman,
Yeah, you're filling with
I'm
confidence.
just thinking about working with prisoners when they're released from prison. What doesn't make the job easy is the fact that prisons are overcrowded and there's very little work done on the offence that the prisoners have committed in the prison. So they're coming out without having any work with them, or many of them are coming out, especially short-term prisoners, without having done any work on the offence and why they were there and all that work, which is what we have to pick up when it comes out. So that's, it's just frustrating for me, and it adds extra work for ourselves. I'm just looking at the rehousing as well. I had a case in Chippenham recently where somebody was rehoused and the Wiltshire Council rehoused them, but they weren't talking to the police in Chippenham. So there was a big kick-off. The neighbours kicked off because these people were wrecking the place and loud music till 3 o'clock in the morning. Wiltshire Council and the police were not in touch with each other, which was crazy because the police are there, 20 yards away is the housing team in Monkton Park in Chippenham. So that's an area where I don't know, could be looked at. Also on the hotspot fund, there's mention that private sector providers can also be commissioned. What form do those private sector providers come in?
Yeah, so if I take those 2 points really quickly, just around the housing in Chippenham, the local neighbourhood policing inspector, they do meet regularly on a fortnightly basis with the local authority, including the housing team. So that particular case, I don't know obviously the detail, but the forums exist where those partnership engagement conversations should be happening, and I know that they do on a regular basis. So if there are any of those sorts of issues, then do feel free to feed them into the neighbourhood policing team, because they should be picking them up locally. In relation to the private sector provision, so effectively what the Home Office are looking to achieve from that fund is to have visible patrolling of those hotspots in the key times, which the data tells us are the opportunities to reduce antisocial behaviour, but not just ASB this time. Actually, there's also a focus around serious violence as well. So the opportunities are that clearly that can be undertaken by the police service, but given the existing demands, we're not going to suddenly find a whole load of extra officers to undertake that. They also are happy for us to look at the provision of wardens, so community wardens. And what we're seeing from the work we've done this year is that those wardens in the towns and Salisbury across the force areas where they've been deployed, they have been positive in their impact. So what we're looking to do this year is effectively commission wardens again, particularly in Swindon and in Salisbury, because we know from the data that actually nighttime economy, particularly in Swindon, is a real driver of some of that behaviour. And we know that uniform presence is helpful and as a deterrent and to respond to incidents. And we know that by commissioning that, we can guarantee the delivery of a certain number of hours of that provision, whereas clearly policing will always be demand-led. So as much as the force will undertake additional patrols, we cannot always be certain that they can be delivered, given they'll be responding to other crimes and other incidents. So that's the opportunity we have through that funding. The key point this year, though, is we're making the most of both of those opportunities. That it is a combined approach which will give us the best possible return on investment.
Right, just come back on that, Chairman. What about the? I'm thinking about the train. I mean, I've looked at street pastors in the past, and we had some in Chippenham, and they were very effective. But they're volunteers, so they drifted away. So if we, what sort of training will these people have? Are they going to be like pub bouncers on the street, or are they going to be more the street pastor? And what you know, if they're going to start getting into situations which are potentially dangerous, what kind of training do they have? All that thing. It's just I'm fully supportive, but I am a little bit worried about the spin-off consequences.
Yeah, so all of those wardens will be licensed. They have to be licensed. They will carry protective equipment to ensure that should they be into a situation which becomes challenging, they've got the appropriate safety equipment. And most importantly, they are trained to undertake conflict resolution reduction. So they are very much there to support the community. They're not there to get involved in violent incidents and that sort of stuff. They are absolutely there to support people that are affected by crime within those hotspots, and particularly as a visible deterrent and help for to tackle violence against women and girls, which we know particularly of a night time is a real risk. So they're absolutely there, and they work in partnership with the police. They are connected through communications with local forces, local patrols, and work closely with them in delivering those patrols.
Okay, I have Councillor Picknell.
Thank you, Chair. It just concerns me that we see with the news and what have you that we've got masses of prisoners being released and not enough tags to go around. How do you find this with Wiltshire? We've got a lot of criminals coming into Wiltshire that we can't track, we can't keep an eye on. How does intelligence work with this? Because it must be a problem.
So the way that the prisoner release process worked last year following the government announcement was that the police in Wiltshire led a process where intelligence packs were developed for every prisoner that was being released into the force area, and they worked closely with probation and other providers to make sure that those support arrangements were in place. Practically, we weren't looking at significant numbers of prisoners being released back into Wiltshire. It wasn't a very high number at all, but the police were very proactive in ensuring that that intelligence package was available, and we knew how best to support those individuals while also ensuring that they remain compliant with whatever conditions they'd been released under.
Okay, Philip, you wanted to come back?
Just very quickly, just big picture. It is a high priority, the reduction of reoffending and you know, support to the criminal justice sector. I do chair the Wiltshire Criminal Justice Board. There is a lot of discussion in the Home Office in terms of giving the PCC or the OPCC greater authority as the convening authority in terms of engaging the various partners and providing greater coherence and a comprehensive response. At the moment, it is really down to the goodwill of lots of partners, and that's why I'm so impressed with what Rob is doing with the CSPs. The moment we don't actually have the legislative authority to do that, but the Home Office is considering giving that to the OPCCs, which I think would be a really good thing.
Thank you. Right, I have no further questions for anyone. So at this stage, I mean, in a moment we'll vote on noting it, but at this stage I'd like to say, Rob, it is absolutely heartwarming to see someone with such a tight grip on their brief. You obviously know the ins and outs of what you're doing. You've been able to answer all the questions with absolute clarity. So thank you on behalf of the panel, thank you for your presentation today. It's been excellent. So can I have someone to propose that we note the report? Councillor Henning, and someone to second, Councillor Adam Cover. All those in favour? Any against? Thank you again for that report. Yep, Councillor Jeans, I know you have to go off to another meeting, so thank you. Agenda item 9 then, Wiltshire Police Contact Management Update. The bullet point there which says we are to hear from the Chief Superintendent, but that's a typo. It should be to hear from the PCC. So,
well, sorry, Chair, you have seen the report.
We have seen the report.
And you know the priority that the Chief, with my support, is giving to the improvements. It is, we are getting better, but not as quickly as either of us would wish us to. We are slowly climbing up the league tables, but not as fast as either the Chief or I would wish to do so.
So the pressure's still on?
The pressure is very much on, and, you know, you keep the pressure on me and I keep the pressure on the Chief.
Okay, any questions or comments about the presentation that we've had in our packs? Whilst you're all thinking about that then, just from my own experience, my own point of view, I feel that probably as a result of the improvements, small at this stage, but noticeable at this stage, I feel as though the confidence in Wiltshire Police has been growing, especially over the last 12 months. And so I think, you know, all of the comments that this panel has made in the past, and they weren't thoughts that you had not had yourself, Philip, that confidence starts with the ability to get in touch and to report crime. I think all of those thoughts are now being proved by what I see on the ground with a greater confidence in the police, and that unfortunately rears its head with less criticism, less open criticism. It's not yet sort of huge pats on the back and huge applause, but there's less criticism on social media and in the street. So I think that's working. Whilst I've been burbling on, has anyone thought of any questions they'd like to ask? I've got Councillor, I'll take Councillor Manro first. Okay, and Councillor Manro, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I agree with you.
Yes.
But there are still some where things are going wrong. Just yesterday or day before yesterday, somebody pictured two lads picking their parcel up from the front door. And I said to them, report it to the police. And she said, oh, they don't do anything. She put it on social media. They found out who those two lads were, but I don't think it's been reported to yourselves. So there is still that disconnect. Thank you.
We're not there yet, but we're getting there.
We'll get there.
Councillor Ali.
Chair, thank you. I've always said that we need to give credit where credit is due. I think the Commission's been very honest and open that he's done much as is possible, but there's a long way to go. And I think knowing that he knows that there is a long way to go, that gives me a bit of confidence as well to go back to my residents who I represent to say, you know, we put our hands up and the Commissioner that everything's not rosy, but we are trying our best with the resources we have. So thank you.
Councillor Henning.
I'm not sure where we are in the agenda.
We are actually on,
probably towards,
we are on agenda item 9,
Yeah,
and
we're
agenda
probably
item 10
towards
is
the end.
future topics.
I've just something because this is why I hate laptops sometimes, because you don't have all the pages in front of you at the same time. And I wanted to come back to Rob. If I no, it's all right now. It's all right. It was under gosh, here we go. We've got to scroll up a bit. It was under the Community Safety and Youth Portfolio Delivery. I know.
Trying to reopen agenda item 8. Which
Yes,
we
I
moved
am.
on from.
I'm just going. I'm walking backwards like for Christmas. It was the large programme of detached youth work and targeted mentoring for young people, Swindon, Chippenham and Salisbury. And in that area, I know one of the police officers in Chippenham put together a little scheme to work with some troubled kids, those hard to reach, although she did say yesterday when I was speaking to her that there are always the next level of hard to reach.
But bearing in mind, we've moved on from that item. Can you shorten this down to a very quick question?
It's the amount of time it took for her to come up with an idea to actually implement what she wanted to do. It took, I think she said 10 months to do that. I initially tried to help her, and she did get funding from your office, Commissioner, in the end, but it just took so long, and I kind of don't understand why. It's a bit like being a councillor when you start on a project and it just goes. It takes years sometimes.
I think possibly the best way of approaching this is we don't have the information in front of us of what was going on. If you could email the PCC with some details of what the problem was and why it took so long, and maybe the PCC and his office can then look into it and get back to you.
Yes, I did say I'd bring it up today on their behalf.
And you've done so. We need
Sorry
to.
about that.
Can we have a proposer to note the agenda item 9, the police contact management update? Councillor Nash, seconded Councillor Mamro. All those in favour? Any against? That's unanimous. Right, agenda item 10, the opportunity for a little bit of local democracy in here. We've got a range of topics. Now, bearing in mind, I won't be here and many of us won't be here for the next panel meeting because we have elections in Wiltshire. I know you don't in Swindon, but but we have elections, and once those elections are held, whoever is successful will then have to wait to see if they're put onto the panel anyway. So we will have a whole host of new faces in June. Bearing that in mind, we've been asked to pick 3 out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 topics that are on the paper here. From the chair, what I would like to propose, based upon what we've heard today and the interested questions we've had today, I would like to propose the following 3 and just go straight to the vote on that. And if that fails, then we can have discussion. The 3 being retail crime, road safety, and estates strategy delivery plan. So all those in favour of those 3 of those 8 topics, those 3 being the ones that are brought forward for the next 3 things to be discussed, show please now. Any against? 2 against.
I mean, I was going to suggest a CSP instead of the stage delivery plan. Delivery plan is always going to be on the agenda anyway, so I was going to suggest.
Okay, that's true.
I would have gone with that as well. Although
Right then.
I'm with you on road safety.
Okay then, amendment to my own proposal. Retail crime, road safety and CSP strategies. All those in favour? Any against? Right, that's the 3 then. Did we get that? Retail crime, road safety and CSP strategies.
May I just ask, Chairman, on complaints handling, I know that one of the scrutiny panels which has been going on was about complaints. Is that I think I chaired one of those. I haven't been asked back since, and I think it's probably because that hasn't sat, because there was a lot of things that came up in that complaints panel that we were or that complaints discussion that we were unhappy with. Is that does that come under that whole item?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, we obviously held that first initial meeting, exploratory meeting around that, and there was obviously lots of feedback in terms of that work. We're still reviewing whether we think that's the best approach for complaints, given they are statutory, they're so statutory prescriptive. Actually, would that input and enhance that service like the other scrutiny groups?
On that basis, then, to cut through this, can you bring a report back to the next meeting as to where you've got to with that, please?
Yeah, we did think.
Okay.
We did think, Chairman, that the complaints, it was possibly not something for a public scrutiny panel. It's too complicated, and it could get.
Okay, we'll move on then. Agenda item 11, communications, and this really is our opportunity to say, is there anything that we've discussed today that we would, as a panel, like to communicate to the people of Swindon and Wiltshire? I think, bearing in mind, this meeting is going to be available for people to watch. The agenda is available. The reports are available. I don't have anything from the chair to propose. Does anyone here think there's anything in particular to raise with the press release? In which case, we will move on to agenda item 12. Date for next meetings, well, 26th of June in Salisbury. And at this stage, before we go on to urgent items, the last agenda item, at this stage, I'd like to wish all of those who are standing the very best of luck. Some of them more luck than others, obviously, but the very best of luck. I know. Keep it clean. Make sure you make manifesto promises that you have every intention of keeping. And I'd like to thank this panel for putting up with me for the last couple of years. I found the whole thing very constructive and very useful and very informative. I think as a panel, we've witnessed great progress being made by the OPCC and by Wiltshire Constabulary. So, it's been heartwarming to see that progress being made, to take it from what was really quite a sad case to turning it around 180 degrees and surging forward. I think we have witnessed some great work, and thank you, the OPCC, the PCC and your team for all that you do. It's been great to witness that, and thank you also to Wiltshire Police. We are always going to be in their debt for the work they do to keep us safe, and so on that basis, I will make no further comments other than to say, are there any urgent items? Good.
I want to raise something. I mean, it's not necessary, but as you rightly say, next year we may have a lot of new members. I mean, in the past, I know. In June, yeah. But in the past, my understanding was there are certain funding available for training, especially for the new members. Whether that is something you want to put on the records for a recommendation, that's entirely.
Kieran, are you aware of such funding?
There is a very small training budget, which council related. We mostly do sort of committee-specific training as part of, we do the sort of general induction for new members, and then once we know who's on specific panels, and I believe we are reaching out to the PCC's office just to see if there's anything they can assist us with there to help provide new members with key information and sort of questions that need to be raised. So it's a work in progress, but I've got a update tomorrow with the lead on the induction program, so we'll certainly follow up on that.
Perhaps you could suggest that they prepare a box set of the videos of these meetings as essential viewing for any future panels.
Might prove counterproductive, but I will suggest that.
Wonderful. Okay, on that basis then, I will close the meeting, and thank you again, everybody.